Every year, I tell myself I'm going to update my wardrobe for spring because I don't have any clothes that I feel fit my style anymore. But I always end up just never getting to it. This year, that's going to change because over the course of spring and summer, I'm going to sew some of my dream items I want to wear for this season. So in today's video, I'm going to make a cute spring top out of the scrap fabric that we have from the last project. We only have about 1.25 yards left of this fabric, so I'm going to start off by sketching out some designs to see what we can do. So like I said, I have been wanting to just find some inspo to make some cute tops to put into my wardrobe just because I feel like I'm outgrowing the wardrobe I have now. So I was looking for halter top styles and also like the peasant top kind of style because I really like puffy sleeves, if you haven't noticed. I'm really into bows as of recently, like I've also mentioned in like the last 3 sewing videos. But I was really just looking around on Pinterest at just some really nice timeless kind of silhouettes when it comes to the tops that I want to make and the fashion that I want to make for a spring summer. After doing the research, I finally had somewhat of a foundation of what I wanted to make, but I thought the draping could also help me out a little bit more of the final version of what I want this top to look like. So I took out my muslin fabric and I just started to get to draping. The base of this top, I wanted it to be a halter top, so I pretty much just draped a basic halter top and then tried to see how I could make it more interesting or just add some flair to it. Okay, so I just finished draping the top, as you guys saw. So I have my final drape. Now I'm going to take my final drape and I'm going to label all the patterns and add any seam allowance I need to on my cutting board, and then make the patterns so that everything's clean when I'm cutting it out on the final fabric. And then I'm going to make a sample, and then we can finally get into the final fabric. So after adjusting my patterns about like 2 to 3 times, I finally got my final pattern pieces, which is what you see on the screen right now. So now I'm getting into making the first pattern. Let me backtrack. I actually did make a first pattern with the initial drape pieces, and it did not come out how I needed to, which is why I then had to adjust the pattern at least like 2 times. And now I'm finally making the final pattern of this, or the final sample of this top, just to make sure that this pattern piece is gonna work. What I really ended up doing was just mainly extending the top part of the bodice, and also extending out the bust piece because I wanted a bit more coverage. So that was really the main 2 adjustments I had to do on the pattern. And from there, I knew I could just jump into the final fabric. So now we're going to get into the final design. So like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm going to be using the remainder fabric from the last project that we just did. If you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. I made a really cute spring dress. So I'm going to use the remainder fabric from that, and I pretty much had just enough. I have a little bit left over, which I probably might end up making some scrunchies with, but yeah, let's get into the sewing. So for this project, I have 4 bodice pieces, 4 bust pieces, 4 strap pieces, and 2 back bodice pieces. And like I always do, these are the measurements from all the pattern pieces I have. Also, I forgot to mention, for the straps, or I guess the string that I'm going to be tying in the front of this shirt, I cut out 10, but I actually only needed 5 because they were actually extremely long. And when I finished this top, they were even longer than I needed them to be. So I would really only make the straps or the little like ties in the front like maybe about like 10 inches long. I made them way too long. But this cut out 10 strings or 10 rectangles that are 10 inches long and however wide you want your straps to be, and then go from there. That's really just based on how you want your front ties to look. So the first thing I did was sew up the front ties because I'm going to need to attach them pretty soon. So I just sewed all of the rectangles in half once, but I actually ended up wanting it smaller than that. So after I folded it in half once, I turned it right side out, and then I folded it in half again just so that it was a bit smaller than I wanted it to. But if you want it to actually just come out how you need it to, just make sure you cut it the width and length of what you need. I just overestimated how big it would have turned out, so that's why I had to do what I did. Then I put the straps to the side for a minute, and now we're going to focus on the bust pieces. Like I said, we have 4 bust pieces. I'm using the same fabric for the lining as like the self fabric. So we have 2 self fabrics and 2 lining fabrics. So the first thing we're going to do is prep the bust pieces by doing the little gathering in the front part of the bust. So where you see the 2 pins, I also have this marked on my pattern piece, but I'm just going to do a basting stitch. You can do 1 or 2. I know you're supposed to do 2, but I did 1. I did a basting stitch from both of those 2 pins, like the green pin to the yellow pin, and then I'm just going to pull the strings so that it gathers a little bit in that area. And make sure to not cut your end thread after you sew. Do not cut it too close because, like I said, you need to pull that thread. So I cut it at least like maybe 5 inches away from the end seam so that I could pull the strings together. This is how it should look once you finish gathering those 2 pieces. Then we're going to add basically the back straps. So I'm attaching the straps at the shoulder seam. You'll see why later, but it just makes sense to do it this way. So I'm starting by attaching the back straps at the shoulder seam so that it's just one long piece. And in the next step, you'll see why we're doing it like this. Now we're going to attach the bodice piece to the bust piece, and we're going to attach it right at that top line for the bodice piece and the bottom line for the bust piece. We're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance and just sew across all the way. After that's sewn together, we're going to do the next part, which is a little bit tricky, but it's really not that hard. Also remember, you should be doing this with all the lining pieces and all the self fabric pieces. So when I showed you earlier how there was 2 self fabric and 2 lining fabric for the bust piece, it should be like that for all of your pieces because there is a lining. So you should be sewing all the lining pieces together and all the self fabric pieces together, because now we're sewing the lining to the self fabric. So to start that, like I said, I'm just going to lay out where I want the ties to be on the center front so that those are enclosed and they look clean once you turn them right side out. So we're basically just going to pin along the center front all the way up, literally from the neckline all the way to the end of where the strap is, and then all the way back around to where the armhole would be. But we're not going to sew where the side seams are, obviously, because we need to turn it right side out. And we're not going to sew at the hem because we're going to hem it later. So this is how it should look once you're done and everything's turned right side out. I also am going to top stitch everything, so you can go ahead and do that. I usually do about like 1/8 from the edge of the fabric. But yeah, this is how it should look. Looks really clean and neat. And now we're going to get into the last part, which is the 2 back pieces, your front self fabric back piece and your lining back piece. So first thing we're going to do is make sure that the front pieces are laid out on your table the way that they should be, like how they will be worn on you. Make sure the two center front pieces are facing each other, and then at the back strap pieces, we are going to attach the two back bodice pieces together. So you're just going to insert those two back straps as you see on the screen, and then pin along the top edge so that everything's center and in place, and just sew 1/2 inch seam straight across the top back piece. Next is the side seams, so you're just going to sew the side seams together, which is pretty explanatory. Pin them together and sew 1/2 inch seam allowance. And lastly, we're going to hem. I did a baby rolled hem, so I literally just did 1/8 and then another 1/8 and rolled it and just stitched that seam together. And then your top is finished. I actually ended up making my ties like way too long, like I said in the beginning. So this is me showing you the top before I ended up modifying it with the strings in the front. Let me know what you guys think of how it looks, or if you think it should be modified. I hope you guys enjoyed my video and that you enjoyed this tutorial. Definitely give me a subscribe if you want to see more. Comment below how you liked this top, and if you decide to make it for yourself, definitely don't forget to tag me and follow me on my socials to stay up to date with anything else that I'm doing. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!